Hi everyone, to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making spanakopita filled flatbreads, soft, pillowy flatbread that's going to be filled with a spinach, feta, cheese, and herb filling. So delicious. These go good with everything. Let's get started. So we're going to begin by making the dough, and if you've watched the other stuffed flatbread videos, it is the same exact recipe. I've already made these filled with cheese. I made them filled with olives and herbs. I've also done a meat-filled version, so the dough is foolproof and I stick to it. So in the bowl of a tabletop mixer, you're going to go ahead and add 2 cups of lukewarm water with 1.5 teaspoons of active dry yeast, 2 teaspoons of granulated sugar, and 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. Whisk that all up and let it sit for a few minutes until the yeast activates. This is an important step because if you're using yeast that's old and it's been laying around for months in your refrigerator, it might have gone bad. It doesn't go bad often, but when it does, the bread is not going to rise. So don't skip this step. Let it sit for about 8 minutes or so until you see a puffy cloud form on the top of the mixture. That's how you know your yeast is going to do its thing. Then go ahead and add 1/4 cup of olive oil to the mixture. Then in a separate bowl, go ahead and whisk together 4 cups of all-purpose flour with 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Add that to the bowl and go ahead and let it knead for about 10 to 12 minutes on low speed. You could increase the speed to high for the final 2 minutes. It's going to be a sticky dough. Go ahead and grease a bowl with a little bit of olive oil. Transfer the dough to the bowl. If it's a little too sticky to handle, you could dip your hands in the bowl or grease your hands with a little bit of olive oil and then work with the dough to transfer it. It's going to be less sticky that way. Toss it in the oil so that way it gets coated. Cover it with plastic wrap and then set it aside in the warmest part of your house until it's doubled in volume. Now while that's happening, you can go ahead and make the spinach filling, which is so simple to do. You're going to go ahead and add 1 finely chopped onion. You need about a small or a medium onion for this. Add it to a skillet with about 1/4 cup of olive oil and a little pinch of salt. Cook it over medium heat until the onion is nice and soft and golden. Once that's done, you can add a little bit of garlic to this if you want. I don't. I keep it traditional and I leave the garlic out. But if you want to, you can just go ahead and grate 2 garlic cloves and add them in at this point. I've also went ahead and I've thinly sliced 6 scallions. After slicing scallions, you can put them in a big bowl of cold water, toss them around, and then lift them out and put them in a strainer to kind of get them nice and clean. Add those to the skillet and just warm them through until they're nice and soft. It's going to take about 2 minutes or so. Then we're going to add the spinach. So I have 1 pound of baby spinach leaves. You can add a half pound more if you have it, but 1 pound will do the trick. Add the spinach in a few batches, and it's going to look like the spinach is not going to fit in my pan, but it really is because a spinach wilts down to almost nothing. Each time you add a batch of spinach, go ahead and season it with a little pinch of salt and some freshly cracked black pepper. Once 1 batch wilts, go ahead and add the other one until all of the spinach is in the pan and wilted. You can raise the heat to high to kind of evaporate as much of the water as possible so that way the filling isn't overly soggy. Then you're going to go ahead and take it off of the heat and in a big mixing bowl add 226 grams or 8 ounces of cream cheese. If you leave it out at room temperature, it's a good idea. Mine is still kind of cold, but I'm thinking that the help from the heat from the spinach mixture will help warm this through and break it up and just soften it out. So I'm putting the spinach mixture over the cream cheese and I'm just going to mix it up until the cream cheese is nice and smooth and just incorporate it in that mixture. Afterwards, I'm going to add a teaspoon of dried dill. If you have fresh dill, just finely chop 1/4 cup of fresh dill and add it to the mixture. Next, I have some mozzarella that I've cubed. You can grate it. It would actually be better to grate it. I was just kind of lazy, so I just cut it up into cubes. As much or as little as you want of mozzarella. It's going to give it that nice pull, which is going to be really nice in this bread. Just add that in the mixture and mix it up until it's soft and almost melted. Next, I have 11 ounces or 300 grams of sheep's milk feta. Crumble that in and mix it up. I'm also going to add some freshly cracked black pepper. Give this all a mix. At this point, give it a taste and see if it needs more seasoning. The salt is perfect because cream cheese is salty, feta is salty, so it has enough salt. But if yours needs a little more salt, you can season it at this point. You could even add a little pinch of crushed red pepper flakes if you wanted to. But that's it. Everything is ready. It's time to assemble these flatbreads. Okay, so it's a good idea to just drizzle a little bit of olive oil, not too much, over your work surface, just because this dough does tend to be really sticky and you want it to be sticky. That's what makes it nice and light. And you can make 16 small flatbreads or 8 larger ones. I'm going to make the 8 bigger ones this time. So I'm just going to cut this into 8 equal pieces. Okay, so just spread each piece out into a flat circle, as thin as you can get it without it becoming translucent, so that way it doesn't tear. And then you're gonna fill the center with as much of the spinach filling as you can. Now, it is a good idea to spread each one out and create a flat disc for each one, so that way you can distribute the filling equally. Because what tends to happen is, I don't know if it happens to you, but to me, I'll put less in the beginning because I have a fear of the filling running out, and then the last few will be overly stuffed. I'm not gonna do that right now because I don't have space, but if you do have space, it's a good idea to do it that way. Otherwise, you might either run out of filling or you might have some left over. Okay, then seal it together. And at this point, because the dough is so soft, it's a good idea to have some flour on hand. This is just all-purpose flour. And just sprinkle both sides with a little bit of flour and press it out to form it into a flatbread. I like to keep it circular in shape. And then have some trays ready lined with parchment paper. If you want to, you can sprinkle a thin layer of finely ground semolina flour on top. It's going to give the bread that bakery texture. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. I'm not doing it today because I'm out of semolina flour. But once you're done, go ahead and carefully transfer the bread onto the prepared trays. And if you're doing the bigger ones, you could fit about 2 or 3 on each tray. I'm going to continue filling these, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Once they're all on the pan, go ahead and brush the tops with either some melted butter or some olive oil. If you want to, at this point, you can sprinkle the tops with some black sesame seeds or white sesame seeds, or a combination of both, or you could leave the sesame seeds out. The oven should be preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. These are going to bake on the center rack for about 25 minutes or until they're nice and golden on top. I'll show you what they look like as soon as they're done. So my spanakopita filled flatbreads are ready. They took almost 30 minutes in the oven. Again, you're looking for that color. Once they get nice and golden brown on top, they are ready. Once they come out of the oven, let them sit for about 10 minutes so that way they can come to room temperature. These taste great at room temperature. Of course, you can toast them ahead of time if you're serving these at a party. They smell amazing. They look so good. Look at how soft the bread is. It's perfectly cooked all around. And when you open it up, look at that filling. Just perfection. Time for the taste test. So good. If you follow my original spanakopita recipe, you'll know that I never cook the spinach. But in this case, because it cooks so quickly, if you don't cook the spinach, it's going to get too soggy. It's going to release too much water into the bread. That's the reason I cooked it. But it's still so moist and fresh and juicy. You get a little bit of pull from the mozzarella, creaminess from the feta. The whole thing is amazing. You guys are going to absolutely love this. Definitely serve this with a little bit of tzatziki on the side. If you want to learn how to make the olive-filled flatbreads, click over here and I'll see you over there. If you want to print out the recipe, it's on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Gracias.